In the vast savannah of the Kijana Safari Reserve, there lived a mother leopard named Amara, who made the decision to leave her pride and raise her cub on her own. Amara had once been a strong and independent member of her pride, but after the birth of her cub, she grew increasingly fearful of the dangers posed by other animals. Specifically, she worried about the territorial male leopards, who could pose a serious threat to her cub. The ever-present instinct of motherhood drove her to protect her cub at all costs, and so one morning, while the sun had not yet risen, she quietly slipped away from the pride and ventured deep into the reserve. At first, life on her own was tough. The vast landscape of the reserve was beautiful, but it was also filled with dangers. Despite the challenges, Amara felt that raising her cub alone was the safest choice. Every day, she would teach her cub the ways of the wild. The lessons were simple: how to stalk silently through the tall grasses, how to leap into the trees for safety, and most importantly, how to hunt. Her cub, which she named Zuri, was curious and energetic, often running ahead in excitement, eager to learn. However, Zuri was young and inexperienced. He often became distracted by the fluttering of butterflies or the chirping of birds, and he would wander too far from Amara. Each time, Amara would sense the growing distance between them, and she would immediately turn around to call for Zuri, her ears pricked for any sound that might signal her cub was in trouble. Zuri, though, would panic when he realized he had wandered off, his heart racing as he called out for her. It was then that Amara would find him, always able to smell his scent carried by the wind, and they would reunite, their bond growing stronger with each small adventure. Despite the emotional highs and lows, Amara remained determined to teach Zuri everything he needed to survive. However, the wild had a way of testing their limits. One afternoon, after a failed hunt, Amara felt exhaustion weigh heavily on her body. The sun beat down mercilessly, and the air was thick with heat. She decided it was time to rest. They found a small patch of shaded grassland where the wind gently rustled the tall grasses, and the sky was clear and blue. Zuri, still full of energy, lay next to his mother for a while, but soon he grew restless. His mischievous nature kicked in, and he began to dart about, chasing the shadows of birds and jumping at the movement of insects. His curiosity got the better of him, and before Amara could stop him, Zuri had run off, deeper into the grasslands. Amara, with her keen senses, tried to call him back, but he was too far gone. The young cub's call for his mother was lost in the vast expanse of the reserve. Amara's heart raced as she sprang to her feet, ready to search for him, but she had no idea that her cub was already on the edge of danger. As Zuri wandered, he unknowingly ran into a dangerous part of the savannah, a dry, open field where vultures had been circling for days, waiting for a meal. These vultures, desperate from hunger, had not eaten in over 3 days and were on the lookout for anything they could feed on. They weren't accustomed to hunting live prey, but their hunger pushed them to act without hesitation. Zuri, unaware of the looming threat, continued to run, his small body darting here and there. The vultures saw him from above and began to descend, their eyes gleaming with hunger. Zuri, terrified, let out a small growl, trying to scare off the vultures, but his tiny voice was no match for the giant scavengers. They descended quickly, pecking at his soft fur. Zuri cried out, calling for his mother, but the wind carried his voice away, and Amara couldn't hear him. The vultures grew bolder, their sharp beaks beginning to tear at his shoulder, drawing blood. Zuri struggled, his small body no match for the ravenous vultures. He whimpered, his wide eyes filling with fear, and as the pain from the pecking intensified, tears welled up in his eyes. His tiny body grew weaker, and he could only wriggle in desperation, trying to escape. Just when it seemed that all hope was lost, a sound broke the silence, the roar of an engine. As Zuri lay helpless, the vultures circling above, the wind suddenly carried the distant hum of a vehicle. Two wildlife rangers, Mark and Liam, were patrolling the Kijana Safari Reserve in their jeep. They had been monitoring the animal populations in the area and keeping an eye out for any unusual activity. Mark, who had sharp instincts when it came to the behavior of animals, noticed the abnormal patterns in the vulture's flight. They were circling in a tight formation, not the usual lazy gliding that vultures often do. Mark immediately felt that something was wrong. "Liam, stop the jeep. Something's happening," Mark said, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. Liam, always quick to follow Mark's lead, slowed the vehicle and brought it to a halt. The two rangers stepped out and followed Mark's gaze to the sky. The vultures were unusually low, and there was an unsettling tension in the air. They knew that vultures did not act this aggressively unless there was something for them to scavenge. Mark gestured for Liam to follow him as they headed towards the area where the vultures were circling. When they reached the location, their worst fears were confirmed. A small leopard cub was being swarmed by the vultures, its body covered in scratches, blood staining its fur. Mark's heart raced. Without a second thought, he grabbed a long wooden stick from the jeep, his eyes locked on the vultures. He swung the stick in the air, shouting loudly to create noise and frighten the birds away. Some of the vultures hesitated, flying off briefly, but most of them remained fixated on the injured cub, their eyes gleaming with hunger. Liam, not wasting any time, ran toward the cub, ignoring the danger. He dropped to his knees and scooped Zuri up in his arms, cradling the small creature close to his chest. Zuri, though injured, instinctively clung to Liam, the warmth of a human's embrace bringing a sense of comfort in the midst of fear. The vultures, seeing their prey being taken, became agitated, screeching angrily as they circled around the two men. Mark continued to wave the stick, trying to fend off the vultures. "Get to the jeep, Liam! Quickly!" he yelled. Liam didn't hesitate. He ran with the injured cub in his arms, his heart pounding as he heard the vultures growling in frustration. Just as they reached the jeep, Mark swung the stick one final time with all his strength, causing several vultures to finally take flight, unable to follow them any longer. The two rangers hurriedly placed Zuri in the back seat of the jeep, and Liam quickly checked the cub's wounds. He could see that the cub's injuries, though severe, were not life-threatening. Zuri whimpered, his tiny body trembling, but his eyes met Liam's with a look of confusion and fear. "It's okay, little one. You're safe now," Liam whispered, gently stroking the cub's head. Mark started the jeep, and the two rangers set off toward the area where they had last seen the mother leopard. As they drove, Liam kept his eyes peeled for any signs of the mother. He knew that once Amara realized Zuri was missing, she would undoubtedly begin searching for him. It wasn't long before they heard a distant, mournful roar. "There!" Mark pointed ahead. Liam's heart skipped a beat as he spotted the shape of a large leopard moving quickly through the grass. It was Amara, her eyes wide with panic as she sniffed the ground in search of her cub. Her body language spoke volumes of her distress. Her ears flicked nervously, and she was darting in and out of the tall grasses, her movements frantic. Mark didn't hesitate. He floored the gas pedal, driving straight toward Amara. As they neared her, the mother leopard stopped and turned, her gaze locking onto the jeep with a fierce intensity. She growled low in warning, her body tense as she prepared to defend herself. But when she saw Zuri, lying in Liam's arms, covered in blood and barely conscious, her expression changed. The protective instinct of motherhood overtook her, and she cautiously approached the jeep, her growl turning into a softer, questioning sound. Liam carefully stepped out of the jeep, still holding Zuri close. He knelt down, offering the injured cub to its mother. "We didn't mean any harm," he said softly, trying to calm the mother. He raised one hand in a peaceful gesture, signaling that they were not a threat. Amara approached, her keen nose sniffing the air as she cautiously examined the situation. She sniffed Zuri's wounds and licked the blood away, her tongue gently brushing over her cub's torn skin. It was then that she seemed to understand. The humans had saved her cub. Her gaze softened, and for a moment, there was an unspoken gratitude between them. Though she was still wary, she made no move to attack. Instead, she gave a low growl, almost as if thanking them in her own way. Mark and Liam took a few steps back, giving the mother and cub space. They watched quietly as Amara licked her cub's wounds, soothing him with her gentle touch. Zuri, though still in pain, let out a soft growl in response, his small body resting against his mother's side. After a long moment, Mark nodded at Liam, signaling that it was time to leave. "We'll let her take care of him from here," Mark said softly. "She's his mother. He's safe now." The two rangers turned and walked back to the jeep, leaving the pair alone in the vast wilderness. As they drove away, Mark glanced in the rearview mirror, watching the silhouette of Amara and Zuri fading into the distance. The encounter had been dangerous, but in the end, it was a testament to the resilience of nature and to the power of compassion.